Hey guys, welcome to a brand new tutorial series, and this will be a brand new channel to go along with everything that I'll be doing within C#. So, the very beginning of this tutorial series is going to be talking about specifically C#, and pretending today whether it is or it isn't your first day in C#, because I've had this asked quite a lot, so I thought I'd be able to cover it. Now, this video is going to be a specific brief on the major things that you will find when you're programming day to day in Unity with C#, and it can lend itself in other areas as well. So let's get started. When you're opening up your Unity scene, I won't show anybody how to do that because I'm sure you do. When we're in the project, what we can do is we can right click, press create, and we'll choose C# script, and then from there what we can do is you can name that whatever you need the script to be. We'll just name this first script, for instance, and then what we'll do is open up, and you will open up in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, doesn't matter which because they both do the same thing. So at the top we've got the two items which are required for all scripts in C#. We've got the public class, which is the name of your script, which if you do change the name of your script within Unity, you need to change this here, and it's a mono behavior script. What I like to do is, this is just for my peace of mind, I like to move all curly brackets below any sort of encapsulating things. So what we do is it starts us off with some basic voids, and they're very similar to functions that you would find in JavaScript and what you'd find when I've done other tutorials in Unity. What I'll do is I'll delete those and we'll start from scratch. So we're going to start with the most common things that you will probably find is that when you're writing your scripts, you're going to be probably writing two different types of variable type. And there's you start by, you can either class a variable as public or private, and the difference between the two is that a public and a private, a public variable is accessible outside of this script. So say you wanted to access a variable in this script in another, it needs to be public so it can be seen elsewhere. Just imagine if you're going into public and you want to be seen by everybody, that's what's going to happen. Private is as it suggests, and you can hover over it and it will give you some indication that it's protected within this script. So if you wanted to keep everything private, it'd be private to this script alone. So keep things according to how you want to access them. And from there, what I'll do is I will get rid of the private for now, because if we also keep it public, we'll be able to see it in the inspector on the right. So from here I'll go through the most common variable types that you will find. So you will most likely have an integer, which is just a whole number, and in C# you'd write public int, and we could write it as health, and we could say health is equal to 5, and that's simple. It's public, it can be seen everywhere, it's a whole number integer, we give it a variable name which is health, and we set it equal to 5. Now we could have another variable which is public, and this could be called a float, and then we could have this called health float and have that equal to 5.0 f with a semicolon. So this means that again it's a public, so you can see it elsewhere. It's a float, and a float is a decimal placed value. We've given it a different variable name so it doesn't clash here, and 5.0 and f just stands for it's a value of 5 with a float value. Again, like we've done, is a public, and can class as a bool, and a bool can be either true or it can be false. So then what we could do is we could say if it's true or false, we can say for this instance it's true. So bool, and you give it any variable name. Any of these names can be anything you like, and a common one would probably be public game object with 2 capitals for each word, and then maybe player with a semicolon. And what that allows you to do is allow you to put a game object which you're referencing as player within the inspector. It just depends how you're going to do it. I'll show these in the inspector, so I'll save this out. I'll go into Unity now. I will select my FPS controller that I've already brought in. I will select my first person character, which is classed as my camera. I'll add my script here, and you'll notice that we've got a script, which is our first script. We've got health equal to 5. We've got health float equal to 5. Now the difference with a float and a whole number is we can say 5.5 there. I cannot actually put a decimal place in an integer value, so if you want it to be more accurate, what you're going to have to true or false is just a tick box, and then player is a game object that you can put in, so you could just drop your FPS controller in there if that is your player. And they're probably the most common things that you will find, but in next tutorials I'll go into these more specifically. And then you're most commonly going to start by writing new methods, or what we'd call it in JavaScript functions. So we have void start, and you always put 2 brackets after the beginning of that, and then you can put 2 curly brackets below there. And start means that as soon as the script is, or the game is started and the script is actually executed, it will execute that code before anything else. Then you have one similarly, update, which is something that's executed every single frame. So if you've got 30 frames in your game, it will be done 30 times every frame, essentially, or every second. And we can also have a different one. So if I put them in sort of order of execution, we can have a void awake, and void awake is extremely similar to start, but the difference being is awake is executed. Say we have this first script on our camera here, and we untick it, so technically it's not running anymore. On start, or void start, means that void start will never be executed, but void awake is executed as soon as the game is started running, and whether not the actual script is enabled, whereas start is only actually executed if the script is enabled as well. So this awake could be used for initialization and doing things that you need to do before anything as soon as your game starts. We can have our own custom method, so it could be void death, so it'd be anything you like. You can name anything that you want. It's really dependent on the things that you need to do, and of course I'll go through it in the future. And below here again, we'll say we can have one, a common one, void on trigger enter, and we'll have it as collider and other, and then we can add 2 curly brackets in there. So from there is the only difference between that and JavaScript is the classification of the method, and you have on trigger enter, but you have the collider, which is the class, and then you give it the actual name that you want it to be referenced as. The only other thing to quickly mention is with these, with C#, you can actually you need to make a function public if you want it to be accessible outside of this script. So if we have public void and new death, for instance, for it to be able to be accessed similarly with public and private, if it's void, it will be private, and if it's the public void, it will be accessible outside of this script. So really, this is just a brief overview of, say, your first day of learning the basics of knowing all the things that you're going to be doing probably on a day-to-day basis when you're going to be doing C# programming within Unity. So you've got to remember that you're going to have variables which are going to be used, integer, float, boolean, and usually a game object. There is many more, but I'm just going to things that I'd even use on a day-to-day basis. Usually it's more often start and update, and then an on trigger enter. But again, I will go through these in more detail in the future. So hopefully this gave you an understanding of getting to sort of grips and dealing with the most important things. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Cheers.